Hey, podcast listeners, Jason here. Well, in this episode, I thought I would do something just a little bit different. Over the last few months and actually 30 episodes now of Distribution Talk, I've had guests on and I've had the opportunity to share ideas with them. And, some of them being actual business owners in the distribution space, some of them being, consultants and thought leaders. It's been refreshing and enjoyable to banter back and forth and ask questions and let them share their wisdom and thoughts and ideas and fears. But this time, I think I'm going to just go by myself. I've been encouraged to do a solo episode for a while now, and around the holiday season, maybe this is the right time to do this. I mean, as I said, I've been blessed with over 30 episodes now of this, wild idea I had just right about this time last year. In fact, it was funny. The origin, and I think I shared this in the original episode, was that, that this could be something I could do. And boy, with a lot of good help, I really got there and I've made a sustainable entity. I mean, gosh, almost every week, having a new episode out. And I think I just crested over 3,000 unique downloads. And my wife and I were looking at, I think it was like 25 or 30 different countries of individuals that are listening to this. Kind of blows my mind, not more than 12 months ago that this was actually going to be reality. Well, in this episode, as I said, I'm going back and really reflecting on it was an article I wrote several years ago. Most recently, it's been resonating with me through not only through the guest interviews, but by some interactions and different business meetings I've had recently. This topic just keeps coming up. The title of this article was, do you own a business or a job? What's really funny about this article is I actually won an award for it. And look, if you knew my academic career, if you look back at Jason Bader in high school or even in college, and you would say that someday, first of all, he got a published article, and second, he actually won an award for it. I mean, you'd be shaking your head. I mean, look, my 20-year-old self is just absolutely blown away and mesmerized. I actually am published and somebody decided to give me a little plaque for it. I mean, it was crazy. Frankly, with that plaque and that little award, I kind of thought it was a scam more than anything. My radar was up. I got this email saying that I won this award. Did I want to come down to Houston to be presented this plaque for this award for this business article? And I'm thinking, oh, okay. Who is trying to milk cash out of Jason today? Turned out to actually be the truth. I had to go verify it through a couple independent friends. Say, hey, is this thing legit? And it's like, oh yeah, it's actually you actually won this thing. Okay. Again, 20-year-old self says, you got to be kidding me. But here I am. So the article actually did resonate with a lot of people. I can remember getting a lot of email from friends just saying, man, they got hit by the 2x4 in the back of the head. This was a wake-up call for many of them. And as I said, this subject has been coming up often, this business or job idea. And let me just kind of give you a little background around where the philosophy is here. So when I think about owning a business, that means that it is a sustainable entity. In other words, I could walk away for a couple, 3 weeks at a time, and that business is going to continue generating revenue. It's not going to implode. I'm going to come back, and really, it's just kind of running like a top. It's still going, it's still moving. Whereas if you have to be there, and look, I harbor no illusion. What I do for a living, I own a job. It may be a corporate entity, but let me tell you something. I am fully aware that I own a job. Without Jason here, it's difficult to drive revenue. So I know that about my situation. But I think about the business owners that I spend a lot of time with, a lot of the distribution owners that I either coach, consult, or I'm just, friends with, I've known over the years. How many of them can honestly say that they own a business? And that, again, they can walk away for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, maybe even 5 weeks at a time, and they'll come back and everything will be running just fine. No worse for the wear. Isn't that the goal of every entrepreneur? When we have this idea, we start a business, or let's say we even take over a business, that ultimately we want to get to a point where it is so self-sustaining that we could literally walk away for a few weeks and we come back and it's still running just fine. It doesn't need us to generate revenue. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Unfortunately, a lot of the companies that I know, and I'm not talking about small entities here. I mean, these could be, 40, 50, $200 million organizations. Often they are run by someone who just has to be there. The owner of that organization, the owner of that business is there all the time. They've got their fingers in every pie here. And so I don't think it's a size issue here, although I think, maybe some of the larger entities maybe have figured this out. But I'll tell you, there's been a lot of companies I've done work with in that, 30 to $50 million that the owner is really tied to the business. In other words, they can't walk away. They go away for a week and it's chaos there because they make all the decisions, and all the people in the organization all defer those decisions to the owner of the company. To me, that's not a business. That is just a high paying job. And so I think, if you ultimately want to get to a point where this is a business entity, another one of the litmus tests, I think, is the company sellable? A lot of companies, they think just because they have a lot of revenue and they've got a lot of employees and they got a lot of customers on their list and things are cooking, that it's a sellable entity. Let me tell you, if the owner of the organization is the sales entity, in other words, they are the lead salesperson, they have all the supplier relationships, whatever it may be. If that is the case, I don't know how sellable that organization really is. Case in point, this is a number of years ago. This is kind of when I first started thinking about this. I was on a board of directors for a trade association. This friend of mine kind of took me aside. Let's call him Dave. So Dave took me aside and he said, "Jace, do you know anybody, who might want to buy our business? We've been in business about 30 years, and my wife, she does the books, and we've been cooking along pretty strong here, and we do about 5 million in revenue, and we've got a really good reputation in the market. People like what we do. Do you think anybody would want to buy this? We're kind of thinking eventually we'd like to retire." I thought about it. I said, "Hey, okay, well, let me give it a little thought." I asked him a few more questions. How many salespeople do you have? What are some of the other key roles in the company? Because I hadn't really met anybody else from this organization. And he said, "Well, it's, primarily I'm the main salesperson, but we've got a couple other salespeople, but yeah, they're okay. They're not very good." He was kind of throwing them under the bus, to be honest with you. Little did he know that he was actually was a pure reflection on himself. But I had to look him in the eye, and I hated to be this brutally honest, but I really had to tell him, I don't think he has a sellable entity. In fact, I'm not sure who would be interested in this because when he and his wife went, what was left? I mean, yeah, there was some inventory. We can all buy inventory, and frankly, we could probably buy newer inventory than what was sitting on his shelves. What, you got a customer list? Okay, but if all the relationships are with you and you leave, what exactly am I buying? So again, I had to really, work this out with him and talk with him, and he didn't like my answer, of course. I think it was just kind of a harsh reality that, you may have run an organization for a very long time and had nice success and nice profitability over the years. But if you don't structure it for sale and you don't structure it where other people can make decisions in it, you don't own a business. You just own a job. So how do you make that company sustainable? How do you turn that high paying job into a business? I think a lot of it comes back to how willing are you to cede control to others and to build a team. A lot of what I do when I see this in companies that I coach, in business owners that I coach, I look at it and they share with me that they'd ultimately like to get to that point where, frankly, they could take a vacation. I think another litmus test here, is can you take 3 to 5 weeks of vacation? And, I learned this from my dad, to be honest with you. He was a master at building a team that allowed him to get away from the company. He built a really great team and a really great management team so that when we were kids, we could go away for vacations and we could be gone 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes even 4 weeks at a time. And that company still ran well. Obviously, he would reach out maybe on a daily basis every other day and check in with his controller and make sure things were going just fine. But he didn't physically have to be there. And I think as I got older, I really admired that. I really realized how smart it was to put together that management team so that he could rely on them to run that operation while, he spent time with his family. And, I think as a business owner who, is the owner of that organization, I mean, really, that's my goal. Spend more time with my family. Being able to have a sustainable entity to spend more time with your family. And so I watched my father build this. It's what I share with a lot of my clients. How do you do this? How do you get to a position where you can either have a sellable entity or you can have something that just runs without you? I mean, I know one gentleman, in fact, I just had a little email correspondence with him recently. He is completely separated from his organization. He's had two presidents over the years who have run that organization for him. He just happens to hold the stock certificate now. Man, that's the nth degree, man. He has gone way he doesn't have to be there, obviously. He in fact separates himself and just occasionally meets with that president to find out how things are going. But talk about giving up control and being comfortable with that, having the confidence in the people that you've hired and recruited. Man, I think that's really where it begins. We have to ask ourselves, who are the people that we've brought into the entity? Have we just hired for jobs when the need arose? It's that reactive type of hiring practice that many of us fall into. We tend to only bring somebody into the organization when we have a need to fill versus really adopting that recruiting mentality where you're going out and hunting. You're looking for the people who you can trust with your baby, that entity that you have built over the years. You're hunting them. You're looking for those qualities and those quality individuals to bring into the organization. The most successful people I've seen there, when they go out recruiting, they don't necessarily have a position open right at that moment, but they're looking for talent. We are hiring, we are recruiting, we're looking. And a lot of that comes back to knowing what they have to offer. See, I think sometimes we don't really know how we would differentiate ourselves. We, in the face of a very talented person, how would we get them to come and join my organization versus stay in the organization maybe they're a part of? Let's face it, the most talented people out there are probably already working for someone else or in another organization. How do we recruit them? How do we plant that seed of doubt that their opportunity and the opportunities for advancement in their organization are not as good as the ones I'm going to offer? How do I make my grass look greener? A lot of this means that you've got to go back and reflect. What am I offering a candidate? What is that value proposition that my organization has for this very talented candidate that I want in my company? This is laying the groundwork. This is how we get ready and how we prepare ourselves for this long-term horizon where we say, within 5 years, I want to be able to take that 3 to 5 week vacation. I want to be able to put my company in a sellable position. It takes the groundwork right now. You have got to recruit the very best people humanly possible. And that starts with knowing, what can I offer them? Once you bring them in the organization, how am I going to train them? How am I going to, move them through the organization, ultimately giving them additional skills and knowledge so that there is that day when I can start ceding responsibility. I can hand over that responsibility to this person. I'm a huge believer that we want to develop people to a point where we don't have to tell them exactly how to accomplish a task. I think there's different types of managers out there. And, there's the micromanager that is really path centric. And what I mean by path centric is, let's say that they want something done. We're going to go with a simple example like they want to have a hallway painted. And the micromanager will provide all the tools, all the paint, the tape, the brushes, the tarps, the ladders, whatever it may take to actually finish that job. But they're also going to provide, here's the brush stroke I want you to use. I want you to start here, move left to right. Then I want you to slide the tarp a little bit forward, tape it down. And they give all the instructions on how to paint this hallway. Whereas someone who is more goal centric, meaning they just want the hallway painted, is they'll provide the tools. And then they will say to whoever they're delegating the task to, paint the hallway and walk away and let them come to their own conclusion. I think that's, ultimately, if we want to get to a position where we have a business, not a job, we have to become more goal centric. We have to let people accomplish tasks and make their own mistakes and do things just a little bit different than maybe we would. In fact, sometimes they're going to do it even better. But we have to quit micromanaging people. So, how do we develop people? How do we give them the confidence so they can make decisions in the future? This is all part of laying that groundwork for ultimately getting to either a sellable entity or one that we can step back from. A lot of my guests talk about making a transition. The more successful ones have said, I ultimately made this transition from working in the business to on the business. And so if you think back, what does that really mean? Well, what it means is they don't have to be there all the time. They've made a conscious decision. They're going to build up their team and build up the skills and the decision making in their management team and the people they trust, that they don't have to physically be there to answer the phone. They don't have to be there to make the decision. They don't have to be there to drive the truck or whatever the task may be. They don't have to be there. They don't have to work in the business for it to be successful. Where their best talents are is they step back and be strategic. They work on the business. That's a lot of what this whole philosophy is getting to, is really trusting the people to work with you and for you to a point where you can step back and make broader decisions, or you can step back and just go on vacation. I mean, look, either way you decide to go, I'm okay with. But I want you to have that freedom. I want you to have that ability. And I want business owners, I mean, they've worked really hard. And I guess I feel really terrible for the ones who have done this for 30 plus years and they're trapped. Nobody wants to buy their company. They can't stop working because everything they have built is in the company. That's just this impossibly depressing thought. And so I guess what I challenge you to do is stop and think about, how do I build my company so that it can be that self-sustaining organization? And if I choose to sell it, it is a sellable entity. Or if I choose to let someone else run it for me and I retain the stock, I can do that too. But that takes work. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Make the decision today if you want to go that direction. Make it today and then start making small steps on getting yourself ready to do that. And if you're having trouble, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to kind of share some thoughts around this. This is something that, I do in my practice. In fact, my business partner, Marshall, he was a master at that. He did really well with his organization. He was able to do that. In fact, when he sold his company, he was able to command the price he wanted, and he didn't have to go with the sale. He didn't have to spend time with the new entity. They said, your team is fully developed. And they took that team, and he didn't have to do anything with that. So that's really that fantastic position. I also had a good friend in a coaching group that I'm in, and his company was called Business Valuation Incorporated. And I remember him sharing with me that 90% of businesses under 5 million in revenue, they either do not sell, period, or they sell considerably less than the potential valuation or what the owner thought it was worth. And so that just kind of, it scared me to a point where I said, I think I really need to try to help business owners, especially, in my niche of the distribution space, to try to build their companies so that they can be sold eventually, or they can at least take a few weeks vacation, heck, a couple of months vacation. Because ultimately, that is what we are trying to do here. We are trying to build up this entity so, we can take care of the people that work with us and for us, but also we need to take care of ourselves. Anyway, I mean, I hope you enjoyed this solo episode of me and my rambling and talking about this. And if you do want some help thinking about this subject, please feel free to reach out to me. We're here to help you if you want to get there. Yeah, I look forward to several new episodes coming up in 2020, and have a wonderful holiday. And I look forward to speaking with you again.